hot though. So I'm shooting this video for you, and then I'm gonna be shooting right after this a video for the big mama version of this, which is a more intimate community. And so when I prepare to shoot these videos, I spend a week or so just kind of going through essays of mine or essays that I'm really inspired by, you know, especially recent ones or recent books or bodies of work. I go through a lot of my own notes around just notes that I've taken from experiences I've had. I am like swimming in the world of self-directed education and have been for the past maybe 2 or 3 years. Before that, it was unschooling specifically. And then now I understand it in a broader sense. So I'm just deeply, deeply fueled right now by understanding how learning happens in different structured environments, you know, with structure looking like different things for different families, different communities. And so I've been spending the past week or so just really immersed in that to sort of distill those into these monthly videos. Sometimes I just take a response, you know, a question from someone and turn that into a video, like the past 2 videos. But this one in week 3, I want to go into something that's come up a lot for me, and that is deschooling. 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 Earlier this year, back in February, I did a 9-week workshop with 13 other women called Raising Free People Workshop. So we just did this deep dive into the transition into a different sort of relationship with your child or a child that you care for. And one of the main things that came up for us as we shared our stories and our aha moments and our stuck points was the deschooling stage, the transition. You know, like if you transition to a healthy way of eating, it means that you got to go to the grocery store. You got to know different things to eat. You got to maybe try new recipes and that sort of thing. When you make this sort of shift, there are also transitions that you need to do, like smaller things to support that greater goal of raising free people. So we talked about how important deschooling was as part of that. In the workshop, we even gave it a definition. A slow and steady practice of facing, naming, and shedding your old normal. A slow and steady practice of facing, naming, and shedding your old normal. As I was combing through those videos and essays and just getting myself back into the space to distill it into these videos, I got all in my feelings. I started bawling. I don't know. I just felt, I think that's another thing that came up in the workshop. A lot of us felt this sense of stuckness, you know, like I'm so used to dealing with it this way. I'm so used to dealing with my daughter this way or my son that way, or that's how I was dealt with. What do I now replace that behavior with, especially in the moment, right? Not in theory, but especially in the moment when it feels like you need to be controlling. Deschooling is the practice of working through that. And so this came up for me today, and this is what I wanted to share in this video. So true. And I immediately thought of my ever-evolving relationship with my daughters too. It's like I love their fire. But if it feels like it's directed at me, I get all in my feelings and start seeing their fire as a personal affront. I've grown to understand that, deschooling all up and through, but I still have moments where I catch myself. It's okay though. My daughters know that I'm committed to this raising free people work, and unschooling is precisely how we keep this as a priority. Yeah, so that's my offering today in the space, is that when you have those moments when your child has that way that you love about them, I've gotten so many messages from you or conversations I've had on the podcast about the fire in your child and wanting to protect that, but also feeling the dissonance between that sense of pride and protection and then also the sense of resentment when it feels like it's directed at you. I'm familiar with that feeling, and it's on one end, it's like that line between saying, you know what, I'm a parent, and as a parent, my decisions aren't always going to include the consent of my child. That's a part of my job. Bet. Agreed. Yeah. That line and the space of, okay, but am I doing this because it's easier than doing the work of doing something more liberatory, more something that's not rooted in my position of power as, you know, as what I'm leaning on. So I know if you're nodding, I can almost see people nodding because I've had the conversation so often. This is what I want to offer. You know, what it says here, it's like, if this is what you want to nurture in them, then you have to be willing to do the work. And sometimes the work means that you do stand in a decision that they don't agree with. But you're never doing that as the default. You're always coming from a space of, what is my focal point here? What is my intention? Is my intention to make the shit stop and make it comfortable for me? Or am I doing this from a space of, okay, this is the type of human being that I'm working with and that I want to nurture and that I feel a sense of responsibility to introduce to these things like social justice and traveling, even if it's just within your city, going to different events together, you know, making sure your kid sees the world. There's so many different ways that we do things that are not necessarily with their consent. We don't say, do you want to go to this museum? We say, hey, we're going to a museum today. So there are times when we're not consent focused. It's more from a space of course, I'm in a position of power and I'm going to use that to expose them to things. And sometimes it means that they're going to push back against some of the things that I see as necessary. But when I'm making the decision on how to handle that, am I coming from a space of, I'm your mother, or I'm your father, or I'm your grandmother, or I'm your teacher or facilitator or whatever? I said, do the shit. Am I coming from that space, or am I coming from, all right, what's going on here? What's the underlying thing? What's the need? And what can I do to use this as like effective communication, which means that both parties are involved in working towards a solution as opposed to like using my position of power and forcing that child to either surrender to that or to just sneak around me or for me to be somehow different to uphold this idea, even though there's all this friction, you know? So yeah, so try to not view the fire as something that's against you when you are making decisions on how to handle those moments with your child when you just want to go into, yo, I fucking said so, shut it down. In those moments, you do have the option to stop and say, all right, what's the intention here? Okay. So that is it for this month. Happy rest of December. Video 4 will come out in 2018. Make sure say a subscribe. To the bottom right of the screen is that little subscribe button. Press it, subscribe, and also thumbs up the video because apparently that makes YouTube happy or something. I don't know. Bye-bye.